Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the summer meeting of the SLELO PRISM Partnership. On behalf of our partners and our host organization, the Nature Conservancy, we do want to thank you for joining us and taking time from your busy schedules to be here. We also wish to welcome anyone from the Invasive Species Advisory Committee or our state agencies who may be on the call. My name is Rob Williams. I'm the manager of the PRISM. A couple of opening notes. One is that we realize that this week is not an ideal week for a meeting due to the holiday and vacations, etc. However, last week and the remainder of the month are not any better. So postponing the summer meeting until autumn would result in a lengthy agenda, and we do want to share important updates mid-season. We do have a lot of information to share with everyone. So those who are not in attendance will receive a meeting summary, as will everyone, for review. And I would like to ask that during the call, please mute your audio and also turning off your camera when not presenting or engaging in conversation helps with the bandwidth issues that we sometimes encounter. And the photo that you're looking at on your screen is of the Eastern Lake Ontario shoreline taken from the Nature Conservancy's El Dorado Nature Preserve. So that we can gain a brief compass bearing for the next hour or so, I'll briefly review the agenda and then we can throw back the gates and dive into our discussions. I have four brief reports to share with everyone. One is on the continued health and safety guidelines. Gypsy moth is a topic of discussion currently, so share some information on the gypsy moth. Also talk a little bit about the Elm Zigzag Sawfly. I'll introduce you to the sawfly and also the box tree moth. We'll hear from Patricia Shulenburg on the Eastern Lake Ontario Dunes Management and Restoration Plan. Very exciting project we have underway. I'll be providing an update from our conservation and GIS analyst, Zack, who couldn't make the call today. I'll also be covering for Robert Smith, our terrestrial restoration coordinator, in his report, talk about biological control releases, both the Hypena Opulenta and EAB BioControl releases, and then update everyone on the control and management work that's underway this summer. We'll hear from Brittney Rogers, our aquatic restoration coordinator, on the watercraft inspection and stewardship program, our AIS 3 Tributary restoration project, and also an update on environmental DNA. Then we'll hear from our education outreach coordinator, Megan, symposium follow-up, our Pledge to Protect, upcoming Pledge to Protect marketing and communications initiative. It's a very exciting event. And then other events that may be coming up later in the summer. If we have updates from statewide partners, we've allotted some time for state agencies to share information with us, and then we'll close with our traditional open dialogue. So to begin, we wanted to share some updates on our continued health and safety guidelines. As everyone knows, variants of the virus continue to be highly invasive. The guidelines that the Nature Conservancy follows are fluid and change often. We will, however, continue to follow safety protocols as deemed appropriate throughout the summer and into the fall. We do anticipate a partial reopen either later in the summer or this fall, with our offices starting to open back up. Restrictions on fieldwork have basically been lifted. We're now considering that all fieldwork is essential. We do have a limit on in-person group size that's only for TNC sponsored events. And it's also based on, whether it's inside or outside. We continue to practice social distancing when appropriate and mask up when in close proximity. So again, these are guidelines that TNC staff is required to follow, and they change every couple of weeks. So we'll continue to keep everyone updated as necessary so that we can look out for the health and safety of everyone that we encounter. And we also disinfect touch points and our hands. So DEC is currently tracking elevated populations of the gypsy moth that are causing noticeable leaf damage across New York. Population cycles seem to expand or peak every 15 years, give or take. Host trees are many and include oak, maple, apple, crabapple, hickory, basswood, aspen, willow, birch, pine, spruce, hemlock, and more. I understand their native range is Western Europe, and they were intentionally introduced into the US in the late 1800s to breed with silkworms to create a hardier variety of silkworm and silk. So these insects are at the upper plateau of the invasive curve. They're well established and therefore very difficult to manage. So here's their egg mass with kind of that furry covering on it. This is one of their caterpillars, what their caterpillars look like. And of course, the adult gypsy moth. I think we're all pretty much familiar with these. We've seen them around. This year is supposed to be, again, that peak year within their life cycle. Next is the Elm Zigzag Sawfly. Our associates at the New York State Department of Agriculture and Markets have informed us that we have a new contender on its way from the north that will likely pose an additional threat to the health of our state's American elm populations, which according to the New York Flora Atlas are established in all but 3 New York counties. And the contender, if you will, shown here is in the upper right is the Elm Zigzag Sawfly, or EZS, Aproceros leucopoda, which is a new invasive species to North America, named after the feeding pattern of its larvae shown here in the middle. This critter can cause significant branch dieback and crown thinning, weakening the trees and causing increased vulnerability to other pests and pathogens. Elms in a variety of habitats, including arboretums, botanical gardens, roadside trees, and in natural woodlands are susceptible. They are parthenogenic, females only, and females begin laying eggs immediately after emergence. I believe up to approximately 50 eggs per event. And the barely visible eggs are commonly placed into the serrated leaf margin shown here on the left. Our neighbors to the north have confirmed the species. The question now is, how can we prevent their introduction into New York? And how quickly can we all orchestrate a collaborative effort to suppress their establishment if or once in New York? So Megan and I have discussed the possibility of possibly organizing a volunteer surveillance network in the SLELO region. What we need is locations or an understanding of the distribution of elm trees in our region. And we don't really have a good feel for that now. So if anyone would like to volunteer on a Sawfly volunteer surveillance network, if you know where there are some elm trees, please contact Megan. On May 26, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency confirmed the presence of what's known as the box tree moth in St. Catharines, Ontario, I believe in a nursery. And so the box tree moth is native to Japan, China, Taiwan, and the Far East. According to the literature, the larvae are voracious defoliators of Buxus and is considered a high consequence defoliating pest of boxwood and other possible hosts. We're not yet certain of other native host trees, as this is a kind of a new to us species. The pest has become established in Western Europe, where it's been extremely damaging to boxwood in the landscape. As I understand, inspections are underway targeting 26 customer facilities, mostly retail, in 7 US states, Michigan, Ohio, New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, South Carolina, and Tennessee. And that list may change. The Animal Plant Health Inspection Service reported that the pest has been found associated with these plants in at least 3 of the states where inspections are underway. Since SLELO is across the river from these finds, Tom Elgeier with Ag and Markets has made our partnership aware of this. If you do think you have found some, take quality close-up photos, contact Team SLELO or Tom Elgeier at Ag and Markets. So this is the adult moth shown here. These are their barely visible eggs. And there's the caterpillar there. So there's a few brief updates on some new pests headed our way. At this time, I believe Patricia is with us on the call. And I'd like to introduce Patricia Shulenburg with the Eastern Lake Ontario Dunes Foundation. And she and the Dunes Foundation are under contract with SLELO to help prepare a dune management and restoration plan. And Patricia is taking the lead role on plan development. So Patricia, if you're with us, and if you would like to share your screen, just let me know.
Yes, I'd like to share my screen, please. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Are you able to, are my slides pulled up?
Yes.
Great. Rob, thank you for having us. We're really excited about this SLELO PRISM special project on behalf of the Dunes Foundation and our subcontractor. Back in December, the Dunes Foundation applied for a SLELO PRISM special project to develop a comprehensive invasive species management plan to benefit the Eastern Lake Ontario dunes and wetlands area. So I'll give you a little bit of an overview of the project, starting out with who the Dunes Foundation is, the significance of the dunes and wetlands system, including some key threatened and endangered species, our targeted invasive species that we're going to take a look at, our methods for mapping and stakeholder engagement, what we hope are the outcomes and deliverables of the project, and I'll share a little bit of some field data that I've gathered so far and some next steps. So the Eastern Lake Ontario Dunes Foundation, you might have been out on the dunes seeing our highly visible signs. These dunes aren't made for walking. We're a volunteer board of directors. We've had a few projects over the years, including our signage to keep foot traffic off of the dunes. Of course, walking on the dunes can create erosion and blowouts. We were able to help the Piping Plover volunteer program started at state parks back in 2016. We received in 2020 a New York State DEC non-ag and non-point source planning grant to look at our shoreline change over time on the dunes. And this year, we're really excited about our SLELO PRISM special project as well. So if you want more information or to get involved with the Dunes Foundation, visit easternlakeontariodunesfoundation.com to learn a little bit more about us and our projects. So the Eastern Lake Ontario Dunes and Wetlands area consists of about 17 miles of freshwater barrier beach. It's significant because it's a national natural landmark and an Audubon important bird area. Their significant coastal fish and wildlife habitat is designated by the Department of State, and it's proposed as a national marine sanctuary. There's significant recreation and tourism that occurs along the Eastern Lake Ontario dunes. And of course, the dunes themselves provide a lot of wonderful ecosystem services, including protective barrier beach for those towns that are inland. There's significant species and habitats along our Eastern Lake Ontario dunes. Some noteworthy species include black tern, Caspian tern, bog, buck moth, sand dune willow, and the dunes themselves are the largest and most extensive freshwater dunes in New York State, so worthy of our protection. So some noteworthy species that are inhabitants of our Eastern Lake Ontario dunes include the federally endangered Great Lakes piping plover, low sand cherry, which is New York State endangered, dune willow, which is New York State threatened, and the dune grass itself, Champlain beach grass, which is New York State endangered. So this might look familiar to a few of you. Our project is modeled after the SLELO PRISM Aquatic Invasive Species Initiative. More information about the AIS project can be found on the SLELO website. Starting out with a habitat assessment, looking at some focused invasive species, the mapping component. We're working with stakeholders to identify the areas most in need for species eradication, suppression, and management, and making future recommendations for restoration projects. Great model. Some of the species that we're taking a look at according to the SLELO PRISM tiered species list include porcelain berry, which is a contender for eradication, suppression, the glossy and common buckthorns, the swallowworts, Japanese knotweed, stiltgrass, oriental bittersweet, phragmites, wild chervil, and honeysuckle. Why is this study and plan important? Because invasive species outcompete native protective plants, including our Champlain beach grass. They provide poor dune stabilization, and they impact protected species habitats. So our picture on the left shows Phragmites, which is becoming more prevalent on our dune system. It's got very shallow root systems, obviously, and spreads primarily through rhizome. It's not a great plant to help stabilize our dunes. There's been a lot of erosion throughout the past couple of years due to high water and other events. Beach grass itself, if you look on the picture to the right, is more suitable. It's like a chain link fence that helps protect our dunes and stabilize that sand and build. It thrives on sand blowing and burying it and building up. So invasive species obviously are poor at dune stabilization and impact these habitats. So what are our methods of accomplishing this? We are working with partners to identify priority survey areas and identify reporting gaps. Are there species in there that are invasive that are underreported, for example, like perhaps spotted knapweed? We're going to be using iMap and iMap Mobile Advanced to map our locations and polygons. We're working with both public and private landowners to look at their sites and assess underreported species. And we're going to conduct a literature review of current management practices as well. So the Dunes Foundation can't do this on our own, and we have subcontracted Resource Environmental Solutions, which is formally Applied Ecological Services, to help us with this task. So our outcomes and deliverables, we're hoping to fill in those invasive species reporting gaps, some of those species that might be underreported. evaluate current invasive species management practices, and of course, make recommendations. Are there things that could be done a little bit differently to help you achieve those eradication and suppression and management goals? We'd like to recommend future restoration projects, including dune willow restoration. One of the pictures at the top, there's a leaf defoliating beetle. So we'd like to make some recommendations on how to suppress this beetle, because our dune willow is important in building the dunes, and it's also a protected species. And we'd like this to be a working document for land managers to help plan for future projects and make recommendations. So some of the things that I've been able to observe while out in the field so far, on the picture to the right, I'm sorry, to the left, we have low sand cherry, which is a New York State endangered plant. And a few feet away from it are some patches of spotted knapweed, which you can see over to the right, that are starting to encroach in on this endangered plant. So this could be a area that we might want to take a look at hand pulling or making some other recommendations. Our picture to the left, sand dune willow is New York State threatened, and there's Phragmites that is starting to encroach on areas where there's significant populations of dune willow. Again, there's more patches of Phragmites that are starting to encroach on areas of dune willow, which again is a protected species. Other sites have spotted knapweed that are starting to crowd out areas of Champlain beachgrass. Again, Champlain beachgrass itself, that wonderful dune builder that helps keep in erosion from happening on the dune and helps build the dune through sand trapping as well, is New York State endangered. I took a little look from a distance, obviously, at Great Lakes piping plover habitat. And I've seen this throughout a few years. There is armor honeysuckle that is starting to crowd out some of the canopy species on the dune. It's also a really great, that woody vegetation is a really great corridor for predators and foxes and other species that could predate Great Lakes piping plover. I've observed purple loosestrife starting to emerge. There's been a lot of fluctuation in water levels, so we're starting to see more purple loosestrife and other species that may have been flooded out start to pop up on the dune. And of course, our old friend Phragmites starting to creep in on piping plover habitat in other areas. So again, it's not a great plant to stabilize the dune, and we want to make sure that we're prioritizing areas that can provide a lot of species benefits, including our threatened and endangered species. So what are our next steps? We've began our stakeholder input meetings to help get input on our priority survey areas for greatest conservation need. We're also asking our partners to help us with some of those underreported species so that we can help fill in those gaps. We've completed, after our completion of survey fieldwork, we'll draft and finalize the plan and present our results. And of course, we're always looking for the next project to support this. So we hope to apply for funding in the future for a wetlands component. So we'd like to thank SLELO PRISM for this opportunity to conduct this comprehensive invasive species management initiative for the Eastern Lake Ontario dunes and the Nature Conservancy. We'd like to thank our participating private landowners and our public land managers as well for their input on priority survey areas. And we appreciate your time and meeting with us at the Dunes Foundation to come up with this really great management and restoration plan to benefit our dunes. So if there's any questions, let me know. And if you'd like to get involved with this or future Dunes Foundation projects, my contact information is below. Thank you.
Super. Thank you so much, Patricia. So if anyone has a question or two, please put it in the chat box. Steve Young did mention that the Heritage Program ranks the Great Lakes dunes ecological community as state and globally rare, which I think is an important thing to know. And so one question I have, Patricia, as I understand, this particular management and restoration plan is first of its kind. In other words, there's never really been something like this plan prepared for Eastern Lake Ontario dunes. Is that correct?
Yeah, I do believe you're correct. So there's a lot of public and private landowners, and obviously invasive species management and restoration activities have happened throughout the years. The goal of the Dunes Foundation and the Dune Coalition is to bring together all of these different land managers, including those private landowners, because obviously our conservation species like piping plovers and our invasive species don't know those land boundaries. So I think it's really important to come up with priority areas and really work together to come up with a plan to prevent spread to other priority areas. So that's why all of the stakeholder input is so important, because our dunes are, of course, this globally rare environment, and we'd like to work together to come up with a plan to protect it. So thank you to everyone that's involved so far, and that I still have some phone calls to make too. So we appreciate your involvement.
Super. Well, thank you very much, Patricia. This is a really exciting project, and we look forward to the future in terms of what it brings and what recommendations might come of it. So
thank you. I'll turn the computer screen back to you.
excellent. Well, thanks again, Patricia, and you are the point person on that. So if anyone has any follow-up or wants to reach out to Patricia, feel free to do so. And thanks again, Patricia, for sharing that insight for the project with us today. So I'd like to provide everyone now with just a brief update from our conservation and GIS analyst, Zack Simek. As you know, Zack is kind of a part-time staff member with the PRISM. And so he does a lot of technical work that we just don't have either the time or capacity to do. And so lately, Zack's been assisting our PRISM with a couple of projects. And first is the mapping of compartments along the Black River Trail, which is needed for our Black River Trail feasibility study. As you know, we've been working, Brittney and Robert have been putting considerable time into an assessment of the Black River Trail, looking at invasive species and also looking at native species along, I think it's like 4.5 miles of the Black River. And the idea with putting the river corridor into compartments helps us in many ways. One is that, if we don't have the resources down the road to do work in all of the compartments, but perhaps funding might allow for several of the compartments, then we can at least prioritize those compartments based on invasive species abundance and down the road for potential restoration needs. So Zack has been working on putting together these maps. The final steps of data analysis is underway, and the map of prioritized compartments, at least with invasive species abundance, is shown here. And again, this will help us to prioritize future suppression and or restoration efforts should they be deemed feasible. So as we finalize the conclusions and recommendations, Zack is also exploring ways to share the extensive native and invasive species data sets through an interactive web application as well, which I find is quite interesting. So you can see here on this map, the light yellow areas have a lower invasive species abundance, and the more orange and red the compartments turn, they have a higher abundance of invasive species. And I believe he's also working on a map that will show areas in that would lend themselves to future restoration measures as well. Zack's also helping us to write a script using the statistical program R, which is a code, as I understand, to generate summary reports of SLILO's watercraft inspection and steward program data, specifically to extract things like aquatic invasive species interceptions. Currently, interceptions are difficult and very time consuming to extract from our dashboard. But we believe interceptions are a vital statistic.
Hi, Rob. We can't actually see your screen if you can share your screen. Sorry to interrupt.
Can you see it now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so sorry about that. Zack is also helping us to write a script using a statistical program, which is a code that generates summary reports and will help us to extract certain information from our WISP dashboard, including aquatic invasive species interceptions. Currently, the interceptions are difficult to extract, but we believe that they're a vital statistic. And the summary report will be able to quickly generate on-demand reports, distilling a robust data set of up, several thousand records into a concise list of key insights. Reports will provide region-wide stats, but can also be filtered to a specific boat launch of interest. So once complete, these reports can also be made available to partners upon request. So was someone help me out here? Was I previously sharing this slide here, talking about Black River? Did everyone see that, or was that?
No, but we didn't see it, but we could hear you.
Okay, so I'll just back up real briefly. This is the other project that Zack's working on, placing the Black River Trail into compartments, which help us to prioritize areas in need of invasive species suppression, and also will help us to prioritize areas along the Black River Trail where restoration might be needed. So Zack's been working on producing some of these maps for us for the Black River Trail, and also being able to extract certain information from our WISP dashboard that is much needed. So apologize for the visual error there. So next we have our terrestrial, I like that, terrestrial restoration and resiliency efforts. Robert Smith's report. Robert's not able to join us today, so I'll be presenting an update on Robert's behalf. So biological control of swallowwort in the Thousand Islands region. This is Hypena Opulenta. It's been a collaborative effort. As many of you know, our collaborators assist in many ways, including rearing and providing the insects to us, providing space for the cages or places to put cages, assisting with transportation. We have cages out on Grenadier Island, and we need boat access to get to the island and back. And providing the cages and equipment required to care for the Hypena. And these collaborators include all kinds of folks: the New York Invasive Species Research Institute, USDA, SUNY ESF, the University of Rhode Island, Thousand Islands Land Trust, the Eastern Lake Ontario Swallowwort Collaborative, Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation, Thousand Islands Land Trust, and DEC. So we also wish to thank the property owners on Grenadier Island who have provided not only space to put the cages, but transportation in terms of picking us up, taking us over the island once a week to monitor the cages and then bringing us back. So this year we tried something new. We released adult moths as an experiment. The last couple of years we released larvae and some pupae. You can see here on the screen in the upper left, we have a cooler with little boxes with screens on top, and there's actually adult moths inside of those little round containers. In the center, you can see Carrie Brown Lima from the Research Institute giving a little talk, some training for us. And then preparing to place the adult moths in one of the cages. And then on the right, you can see a before picture of the amount and volume of swallowwort inside one of those test cages. And I should also note that in the past couple of years, we've had 2 cages, then we went to 3, and now we're up to 4 cages. So the Hypena Opulenta is a moth native to the Ukraine. The adults have dull light brown forewings with a dark band in the middle and hind wings that are pale orange. The body length is about 1 centimeter and the wingspan is about 3 centimeters. The larvae start out white but later become green with black spots and a yellow head. The life cycle of the Hypena starts with the emergence from the egg as a larva. The larva goes through 5 stages or instars. The last molt occurs at the end of the 5th instar and transforms larvae into pupa. Inside the pupa, the Hypena undergoes metamorphosis that results in the emergence of the adult moth. The adults lay eggs and will continue to do so during an approximate 2 to 3 week average lifespan. They can lay up to 600 eggs with an average of 400 eggs. 2 generations may occur in the same year, and the larvae feed exclusively on pale and black swallowwort, and that's why they were chosen as a biological control. And here on the screen, you can see the adult moth, some limited feeding on some of the leaves, and a couple of the instars as they crawl around and do their things on the swallowwort leaves. We set up 4 cages this year, 2 out on Grenadier Island and 2 at Whaley State Park, with permission from both the park and the landowners on Grenadier Island. Approximately 20 males and 20 females were placed in each cage on Grenadier Island. I believe 20 males and 20 females were placed in one cage, and 10 females were placed in the second cage at Whaley. So the Hypena were placed in the cages on June 1st. They'll be released from the cages sometime this month. Some defoliation has started to occur in the cages, and we'll continue to monitor these cages until we observe significant swallowwort defoliation. You may recall a year or 2 ago, we had I think it was in a 5-week period when the cages at Whaley had nearly 100% defoliation inside the cage. So that was really exciting to see. Eventually, we'll then remove the cages and allow the larvae to disperse, as has been done in previous years. We also may have an opportunity to release additional Hypena later this summer, pending their availability. So that's also exciting. So the long-term strategy for the Hypena biocontrol releases is we want to hope for minimum predation of released larvae and future generations. We understand that they can successfully overwinter in our climate. We'll continue to monitor the sites for evidence of establishment, and then we will continue annual releases of Hypena Opulenta in various life stages as they become available to us from the folks who are rearing the bugs. Next, we wanted to share with you just an update on emerald ash borer biological control releases. Their parasitoid wasps have been released in 3 of 5 counties in the SLELO region, and those are St. Lawrence, Jefferson, and Oneida counties. There are 3 species that have been released: Ubius agrilli, which is an egg parasitoid, Tetrasticus plantapennis, and Spatheus gallinae, which are larval parasitoids. So release rates in the region are about 600 per year for Spatheus, about 1,200 per year for Ubius and Tetrasticus. And according to the USDA, good sites for release are areas larger than 40 acres with at least 25% ash density. Smaller sites may be acceptable if ash density is high. Sites where trees will not be harvested for the next 5 years is preferred. Public land is often preferred over private land due to the uncertainty of continued permissions throughout the period of release and recovery. Areas must also be approved for any activities related to the release. Preferred sites include a range of size classes from seedling to mature trees and should have a low to moderate EAB population. That is, most trees should still appear to be fairly healthy with a full crown or small degree of crown dieback. These are guidelines, not strict rules. So an area not meeting these requirements may still be eligible. We do have to apply about a year in advance to obtain the biocontrols. So if you are aware of an EAB infested area that meets or is close to these requirements, please send Robert an email and we can evaluate the sites and try to get them on the list for the following season to release these parasitoids. Giant hogweed management has been completed for this year. We checked 48 sites. 40 of these sites had no germination, which is really good. Permission was not granted at 1 site. Giant hogweed was found at 7 sites. 6 were treated using foliar application. 1 was treated using the root cut method. And 11 sites were long-term monitoring sites and were not due to be monitored for 6 or 9 years free of giant hogweed. So the total sites that SLELO is currently responsible for is 59. And our control contractor is now has moved away from hogweed and will be working on swallowwort sites at multiple priority conservation areas. I would note that we did receive some information from Lewis County of some new hogweed sites. The referral was made to the DEC's giant hogweed program. And then from there, they will contact partners to help with those new sites, or they will take on those new sites with DEC's control team. So we're making some headway on hogweed. It's pretty fluid because every time you knock some sites back and you see no germination, you know, often is the case when someone finds a new plant or 2 or a new site that gets reported. So it's kind of up and down, but if we stay on top of it, we think we can actually eradicate several of these sites due to the biology of hogweed plants. So I'd like to turn it over to Brittney Rogers to talk about our aquatic programs. Brittney's our aquatic restoration and resiliency coordinator, and I believe she is on the line. So welcome, Brittney.
Thank you, Rob. I will just ask you to change slides. So if you want to go to the next slide.
Okay.
So thank you so much to everyone joining. I know that many of you joined because you're interested in hearing the updates about the different work that we're doing. But if anybody has questions about any of the updates that I'm going to share today, please feel free to contact me or reach out and we can talk more in depth about the work that's happening. So I just wanted to start off by saying that we have kicked off another really successful start to our steward program, which is conducted in collaboration with the Thousand Islands Lands Trust. So if anybody has worked with Tilt before or sees our stewards out there, they're representing both SLEBO and Tilt. So just a quick look, we've collected almost 4,000 surveys as of right now. We've spoken with over 4,000 or over almost 10,000 people doing that. And we've intercepted 216 invasive species. So when we are looking at where boats are registered to or where people are going and coming from, interestingly enough, we've seen people from the West Coast, so Oregon down to Texas, Florida up to Maine, and then a ton of states in between. So we're seeing a shortage in number of surveys conducted or number of watercraft being launched, but we think a lot of that is due to the extensive amount of launches that are on Eastern Lake Ontario and the St. Lawrence with the low water levels this year. So some of the launches people aren't actually able to boat at as they were last year or in years in the past. The two most common invasive species that we're finding right now are curly-leaf pondweed and Eurasian water milfoil. Part of that is also due to just their general nature of growth. Early in the season, we basically only see curly-leaf pondweed, and then the next one we usually see is Eurasian water milfoil. So that's what's really happening. Our busiest launches have actually transitioned a little bit this year, which is always interesting to look year to year how things change. Delta Lake is one of our busiest launches, followed by Lake Bonaparte and Godfrey Point. If you go to the next slide, please. Our stewards are participating in a lot of different programs, and we're trying to consistently improve the program and also our understanding of these boat launches, their use, the species that are in those areas, and ways that we can work with the managers to improve as well. On the left-hand side, the image you see there is a new survey that we're doing just for our stewards. So when they arrive in the morning, they count the number of vehicles or trailers that are in the parking lot, and that's an indication to us if our stewards are missing boats before they get in. So people are launching early in the morning. So our stewards start at 8 a.m., for example. And then doing the same thing at checkout, just in case, you know, we're seeing how many boats are being left in the trailer after like 5 p.m. So this has been really interesting for us to see the differences in, you know, timing. Some of the boat launches are really primarily people going there to fish. So one example is Godfrey Point. So that's a good example for us. Maybe in future years, we could have stewards there earlier. The middle image is one of our stewards actually doing rake tosses that's Stony Creek, I believe. And so we're doing rake tosses at every launch to start getting an idea of what plants are growing in those areas. So we can see, okay, if we're constantly bringing up these 10 plants, then doing these rake tosses will help us understand that, you know, if they're actually growing right in that area, or maybe they're bringing it from further out wherever they were. And then finally, we have full stations set up, tablecloths and things to just help with outreach. And so we are conducting, we call them walk-up surveys. So a lot of people will come up to the table, ask the stewards what they're doing. And then also there's anglers that don't have boats that just fish at the launch sites. So we're also talking to them and working to teach them how to inspect their gear. So that's it for the WISP program. If anyone has questions or wants more details in the future, I'm happy to share. If you could go to the next slide, Rob. So in 2021, we have already started our terrestrial and aquatic field surveys or early detection field surveys. I'm mostly going to highlight the aquatic focused ones. We have completed Mud Lake and we found no tier 1 or tier 2 species that were unexpected to be there. But we will be going out to Goffin Bay, Delta Lake, Fish Creek, French Creek, Mud Bay, we already completed Mud Lake, the Upper and Lower Lakes Wildlife Management Area, and then potentially the Whetstone Reservoir a little bit later in the season as well. And so we will be doing that and sharing probably in the fall partner meeting. We'll share all the results from there. If you want to go to the next slide. I think I saw Steve Young on the line, so shout out to you for assisting me with this part. One of the big things that we're trying to change our focus to in the SLELO region is really just getting a better understanding of what we're protecting. And so one of the things that Robert and I have noticed is that there's just not super comprehensive distribution list of the native aquatic species and where they exist. So we're working with the Natural Heritage Program and the New York Flora Association to help update those distribution lists, but then also identify any native aquatic species we see along with the invasives that we see as well. So this is super exciting. Steve Young sent me a very comprehensive list of all the aquatic plants that are known to exist in New York State. And we're going to work with the other PRISM aquatic staff as well to help get them these lists too. So thank you for that. Rob, if you want to go to the next slide. I am just going to briefly update the Aquatic Restoration Initiative Phase 2. So the goal of this is to suppress invasive species and restore some of our native species at 3 tributaries in the Eastern Lake Ontario region. Most of the focus will actually be on South Sandy Creek due to the extensive populations of Japanese knotweed and Phragmites at those sites. So we'll be doing this work through herbicide application, mechanical removal, and hopefully some biological control if we can get access to some insects to release for purple loosestrife. And then once that work is underway and kind of completed for the year, we're going to work with collecting seed on site and then also spreading some seed mixes where we've removed Japanese knotweed or Phragmites. And all of this is being done in collaboration with the Cardno. And the reason why we chose Cardno is just because of their extensive experience developing and implementing large complex restoration projects. So although this one might be minor to some projects they've done, like the Onondaga Lake Superfund habitat restoration work that they did, we're very excited to have this team on board. I know you all heard from Patricia Shulenburg earlier, and she is one of the staff through Cardno that we'll be working with, which is separate from our dunes work. So thank you to Cardno for joining us on this effort, and we are very excited to start getting things to move forward. If you want to just click next, Rob. I went out and kayaked the South Sandy Creek, and just this is a not staged photo. I literally paddled past this Japanese knotweed stem that had roots attached that must have dislodged from one of the shorelines and was just washing up the creek. So we're not only protecting South Sandy Creek for some of these areas, but also hoping to reduce the spread of these invasives to other areas through their connectivity with Lake Ontario. Next slide, please. So talking about the Tributary eDNA project, we are so excited that this is coming to fruition. We have funding from the Arconic Foundation and working with the Sustainable Fisheries Ecologists through TNC. And we actually just hired, and at the beginning of August, we will be onboarding a project tech who will be assisting us with sampling. And we'll be looking at about 15 tributaries across Eastern Lake Ontario and up into the St. Lawrence near Cornwall Island. So we're looking for both some native species and invasives, again, looking at that aspect of what we're protecting. So understanding what native species that are important or ecological indicators of certain tributaries, if they're existing in those, what invasive species might be impacting them. Next slide, please. So just a brief overview of what our sampling is going to look like in case anybody wants to get out and join us or participate in any capacity. We'll start sampling in August, doing all 15 sites. And then in September, we'll only be doing 5 priority sites, but then we're also working to host a volunteer event to do a sample collection, show people, just the in and out of collecting water samples for eDNA, processing them, and some other fun stuff there too. And then October, we'll be collecting at 15 sites, but those 5 priority sites we'll be going to twice. In November, we'll go to the 5 priority sites twice again. And then December, we'll go to all 15 sites, but the 5 priority sites twice. The reason for this is because we are also trying to catch over time, catch the species that might be going in these tributaries to spawn as well. So hopefully some super exciting results will come out of this. And Rob, if you want to go to the next slide, please. I just want to end this with just kind of a final thing that, you know, a lot of people love being out on the water, and a lot of times we're asking for volunteers to assist us with terrestrial events, but if anyone is interested in assisting us with any of our aquatic surveys, actually capturing photos or videos of things, going out and helping us with our eDNA work, or basically any of the work that I'm doing, please just let me know. I'm happy to help either coordinate if you want to join professionally, or if you know anyone who's interested in volunteering. Last year, Robert and I spent about 50 days out at our PCAs, our management sites, and the Black River Trail. So we're anticipating about another 50 days this year. So lots of time out there. We're out there a lot, and we're so happy to share our knowledge and share the information about these sites with everybody else. So if anyone's interested, just contact me. And that is the end of my update for today. I apologize for being quick and brief, but if anyone needs to contact me or has questions, please feel free to do so. Thank you.
Super. Thank you so much, Brittney. A lot of great work there. And I see there's some information going back and forth in the chat box. I don't see any specific questions, but if one is addressed to you, Brittney, perhaps you could respond in the chat box. So next, I'd like to introduce Megan Pistolis, our Education and Outreach Coordinator, for her updates. Megan.
Hello, everyone. Nice to see you. So I'm just going to give you some updates. Rob, you can go to the next slide. So this provides a snapshot of our efforts from April to June. So as you can see, we've had a lot of engagements on social media and our website platforms. We've held 6 events, which average to about 2 events per month. And we've had a total of 353 attendees at these events. Next slide. As many of you know, we held our very first virtual symposium last month from 10 to 3, June 23rd and 24th. We had a total of 19 speakers and 119 individuals registered for these events. So from the evaluations I've received so far, overall, folks thought the event was well organized, and despite being virtual, attendees were engaged during themed breakout sessions and had an opportunity to play virtual trivia to win prizes donated by the Indian River Lakes Conservancy, Tug Hill Tomorrow Land Trust, and Save the River. So we consider this a success. On to the next. So I had mentioned this last meeting, but wanted to reiterate that those of you who are organizing water chestnut pools can really make your efforts count. As we've seen with the statewide water inspection steward program, when a single platform is used to report standardized data, we can really see our impact. So I had emailed the water chestnut pool organizers that I'm familiar with a step-by-step guide on how to report this data to iMap, specifically for water chestnut. This document is also available on the iMap, Invasives, and the SLILA website. I am also available to show those who lead pools how to do this, and if I'm given enough notice, I could likely join some of the pools this summer that are occurring in the SLILA region to contribute an educational component and also help get data into iMap. I'm going to put a link for the document that I'm speaking about in the chat really quick, just so you can grab it. On to the next, Rob. So as you may recall, SLILA was undergoing a marketing initiative using the Pledge to Protect theme. We have been working with Break the Ice Media and are aiming to roll out the components of this initiative this summer and fall. So far we've developed a branding logo and a website landing page, virtual toolboxes, along with a newsletter template and a marketing strategy, which I'm going to give you a brief overview of. Next slide. So there are many other outreach campaigns that aim to encourage the public to protect their lands and waters from the threat of invasive species. Our Pledge to Protect initiative aims to change behavior through action. The campaign will leverage our website, social media outlets, and email marketing to promote awareness of invasive species and to encourage audiences to take a pledge to protect their favorite hiking trails or lands, waterways, gardens, forests, and communities. Upon taking the pledge, pledgers become protectors and unlock virtual toolboxes. There are toolboxes for each specific pledge category that outlines simple steps anyone can take to fulfill their pledge, along with a showcase of invasives they may encounter from a specific category. For example, if they pledge to protect their waters, the toolbox would feature aquatic invasives. Also, best management practices to control those species mentioned, and opportunities to volunteer and how to report invasives via iMap. Each toolbox also has its own badge that pledgers can earn by completing the outlined action steps, and the badges can be downloaded by pledgers along with pre-made graphics and captions with the Pledge to Protect hashtag ready for pledgers to use on their social media channels. So the pledge begins on this landing page, which you see on the slide here, which is on our will be on our website. On this page, visitors see the pledge form, which you could see highlighted here. This is where visitors take the pledge to become official protectors. They can choose to protect their favorite lands, trails, forests, waters, gardens, and communities. The page also explains what pledgers will be protecting and what resources they get when they take the pledge. Along the bottom, there's an overview of the SLELO region with images and stats of the land and water coverage of the region. Along the top of the page, there are images of each protector's category that when clicked, open virtual toolboxes. You can go to the next. So this is the toolbox that opens when someone pledges to protect their garden and become a garden protector. The toolbox outlines actions that the pledger can take to protect their garden from invasive species. The actions begin with simple steps like choosing to grow native plants instead of exotic or invasive plants. There is also a get to know your invasive section on the page for the garden protectors to learn about invasives that they may commonly find in their yards or that they may have considered to be an ornamental plant that they should possibly consider growing a native alternative to. Porcelainberry, buckthorn, honeysuckle, or wild parsnip are just some of the examples. And in the section, you can see that there's photos provided and also a list of the species of concern that hyperlink to our species page where folks can learn more. There is also a take the next step section. This is where best management practices for the showcased invasives are provided, along with information on how to report to iMap and an opportunity to join our volunteer surveillance network. And this is just one of the examples. There's a virtual toolbox for all of the pledge categories. You can go to the next. So part of our marketing strategy is to incorporate gamification into the campaign. So to do this, we've developed collectible badges that pledgers earn by taking the actions outlined in the virtual toolboxes. So there is a badge for each category. The tree badge is for forest protectors, the tent for trails and lands, the flowers are for gardeners, the boat is for waters, and the house and yard badge is for community protectors. These badges can be collected and showcased digitally on social media channels. We will also have social media challenges that encourage folks to take the pledge and earn badges, or that showcase those who have already taken the pledge. These badges will also be great as embroidered patches on our swag and other swag items as part of promotional outreach for the campaign. Next. And no marketing campaign is complete without a custom logo. So the example on the left is the main logo. The hands holding the water drop and leaves represent protecting lands and waters. The concept of the hands was borrowed from our existing SLELO logo. The tagline, responsibly, resourcefully, and repeatedly, refers to the actions demonstrated in the toolboxes that we want pledgers to take. The example on the right shows how the taglines can represent the different pledge categories. This is the example of the lands and trails. There'll also be a forest, waters, gardens, and community Next. So engagement is a large component to the marketing strategy. We are leveraging our constant contact email platform to communicate with pledgers and to also track engagement. This is the design for the Pledge to Protect e-newsletter. This example is showing confirmation email that is sent to pledgers after they take the pledge to welcome them and to provide them with a downloadable PDF version of the virtual toolbox resources that are specific to the category they pledged to protect. It is meant to be a tangible document. Each virtual toolbox, you can go to the next. So we have a tangible document that can be downloaded as well on each toolbox that, as I mentioned, a link in the constant contact welcome email will send them to this downloadable toolbox. So this is the tangible document. This template is going to have different images in it. You can see here that there's a bunch of cloud images, and also the front cover will be different too. This is just showing you the layout. What it does is provide the pledger with actions they can take to protect specific categories or a single category or multiple categories that they decided to pledge to protect. So for example, if someone pledged to protect their garden, these photos would be of gardening photos and of the garden invaders that would be mentioned. And also we would have the management guidance and volunteer opportunities and the action steps that we would want gardeners to take. We can go to the next. Also, as part of the advertising strategy for the campaign, we're renting billboards throughout the SLELO region. Billboards will have a scenery background that is related to the pledge category. They will be located along major travel corridors and locations near recreational points of interest in the SLELO region. The boards are scheduled to go up when the campaign launches and will continue through September for salmon fishing and into leaf peeping season. This is an example for the lands and trails category. We haven't received the final vector file, so this logo will likely look much better than it does in this example, and the scenery image will likely change, but I just wanted to give you an idea of the look that we're going for. Next slide, please. All right, so we are planning to launch the campaign the last week of July or first week of August. Right now, we're planning our editorial and social media calendars and advertising strategy. And you can click next because I've got an animation. We're also collecting resources for the virtual toolboxes. Resources can include, but aren't limited to, best management practices, brochures, videos, posters, flyers, etc. If partners have any of these resources that they would like to contribute, please email them to me with a subject line virtual toolbox. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Megan. So this is a super exciting effort, and I know that, that Megan has put substantial time into this. So we're kind of giving you a preview, a glimpse of this marketing and communications effort. And once we launch it, we hope that all our partners will participate. And then we'll likely do some challenges too, like, you know, let's have 100 pledgers by the end of this month, or things like that, or you know, some type of reward system too. So. And also, I would mention that we are designing this so that other partners can take advantage of this. So, you know, if the other 7 prisms in New York wanted to take advantage of this Pledge to Protect campaign and kind of adopt it, they're entirely welcome to, and any other organizations that want to use it as well. You know, we want this available for everyone. It would be great if we were to see, you know, Pledge to Protect, you know, take the pledge, get the tools all across New York State, kind of one consistent theme. So yes, it will be available for basically anyone's use. But it's still in development. We'd like to think we're in the final stages of development with, as Megan mentioned, a potential launch for the end of this month, beginning of next month. So Thank you, Megan. And also, Megan, I would just encourage you to look through the chat box to see if there's any questions that folks might like answered. So at this point, I'd like to invite anyone from state agencies, DEC, the Invasive Species Coordination Section, iMap, NYISRI. I think Tom Algeier is on the line, at least he was. If anyone has any updates or information you'd like to share, now would be the time.
Hey, Rob, it's Tom Algeier.
Hi, Tom.
Just give a real quick update that we are trapping for box tree moth throughout the state. And then also, we don't currently have any plans for trapping zigzag sawfly, but that is a possibility in future years. Chris Logue, our director, will be addressing the prison leaders tomorrow on the prison leader call as far as a spotted lanternfly response update. So I'm going to kind of skip over that, other than the fact that it was confirmed, spotted lanternfly was confirmed in New York County as well. Beyond that, that's all I got.
Super. Well, thank you very much, Tom. Anyone else from any one of our state agencies?
Rob, this is Steve Young.
Hi, Steve.
Hi. Down in the lower Hudson Valley, there's been an outbreak of something that's affecting spicebush, the shrub spicebush. So it's looks like some kind of bacteria or something. We're not sure if it's an insect or what. So Cornell is trying to figure that out right now. But just keep your eyes out for anything that is killing spicebush or defoliating spicebush.
Yeah, will do. Steve, I know we have a lot of spicebush upstate New York, so thank you. Anyone else? All right, so is there any of our SLELO partners who have an announcement they would like to make? So our next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, October 21st. Whether or not it will be in person, we're unsure of. I would like to think so. I'm sure would love to see everyone in person again. So we'll keep you posted on that, but please put a placeholder in your calendar for October 21st. I would also note that, we have a very functional website, and we're constantly uploading new information to sleloinvasives.org. So please, continue to reach out and look at our website to garnish information. And as we continue a lot of our virtual protocols here, I just wanted to let everyone know that Team SLELO is reachable. You have all of our email addresses on our screen, including Zack Simek. So please, feel free to reach out to us at any time. We are really engaged with a lot of field work at this time of the year. So, be patient with a response, but we are available and we are reachable. And if there's no other business and no one has any announcements they would like to make, I would just bring our meeting to a close by saying that in the spirit of nature, everything is connected. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. If you have any other questions or would like follow-up, feel free to reach out to any of us. And if we don't see you sooner, we hope to see you in October. Thank you very much, everyone.